Hello everyone, today I want to share with you a personal story about how reading changed my life and helped me learn English in ways I never expected. This is not a story about becoming fluent overnight. It's a story about small steps, daily habits, and the surprising power of simply reading a little bit every day. 2 years ago, I was struggling with my English. I had been studying for almost 3 years, but I still felt stuck. I could understand simple conversations, and I could speak a little, but something was missing. My vocabulary was limited. I kept using the same basic words over and over. My grammar was full of mistakes. And when I tried to write anything, even a simple email, I felt frustrated and unsure. I decided to take an English class at a local language school. The teacher's name was Mr. Peterson. He was an older man with gray hair and glasses. He always wore colorful sweaters and had a calm, patient way of teaching. On the first day of class, he asked us a question. How many of you read in English regularly? Only 2 students raised their hands. I didn't raise mine. Mr. Peterson nodded slowly. He said that reading was one of the most important tools for learning a language, but most students ignored it. They focused only on speaking and listening. They thought reading was boring or too difficult. He told us that if we wanted to improve quickly, we needed to start reading every day, even if it was just for 10 minutes. I remember feeling skeptical. Reading seemed so passive compared to speaking or listening to music or watching videos. How could sitting quietly with a book help me learn English? I thought it sounded boring and old-fashioned. But Mr. Peterson was so confident about it that I decided to give it a try. That evening, I went to the library near my house. I walked between the tall shelves, looking at all the books written in English. There were so many. Thick novels, thin books, books with colorful covers, books with serious-looking covers. I felt overwhelmed. Where should I start? I remembered what Mr. Peterson had said in class. Start with something easy and interesting. Don't pick something too difficult, or you'll get frustrated and give up. I walked over to the section with children's books and young adult fiction. I picked up a thin book with a blue cover. It was a story about a boy who finds a magic key. The back cover said it was for ages 10 to 12. Perfect, I thought. That's probably my English level anyway. I checked out the book and went home. That night, after dinner, I sat on my bed and opened the book. I started reading the first page. It was slow at first. There were words I didn't know. I had to stop and think about the meaning of some sentences. But I kept going. I read for about 15 minutes. And then I felt tired. I put the book down and went to sleep. The next night, I did the same thing. I read for another 15 minutes. This time, it felt a little easier. I was getting used to the rhythm of the sentences. Some of the words from the previous night appeared again, and this time I recognized them without having to think too hard. It felt good, like solving a small puzzle. I continued this routine every night. 15 minutes before bed, I would read a few pages. Sometimes I understood everything. Sometimes I had to guess the meaning of words from the context. I didn't look up every word in the dictionary like I used to do. Instead, I tried to understand the general meaning and kept reading. This made the experience much more enjoyable and less stressful. After 2 weeks, I finished the book. I couldn't believe it. I had actually finished an entire book in English. It was a simple book, yes, but it was still a book. I felt proud of myself. More importantly, I noticed something interesting. When I spoke in English class, I found myself using new words that I had learned from the book. Words like curious, adventure, mysterious, and courage. These words just came out naturally when I was speaking. I hadn't memorized them on purpose. They had simply stayed in my mind because I had seen them multiple times while reading. Mr. Peterson noticed too. He complimented me on my vocabulary and asked if I had been studying extra. I told him about the book I had read. He smiled and said, "You see? Reading works. Keep going. Don't stop now." I went back to the library and borrowed another book. This time, I chose a book of short stories. Each story was only a few pages long, which felt perfect. I could finish one story in one sitting, and that gave me a sense of accomplishment. The stories were interesting too. They were about different topics: friendship, family, mystery, humor. I enjoyed them so much that sometimes I would read for longer than 15 minutes. As the weeks went by, I noticed more changes. My grammar started to improve without me even trying. I wasn't studying grammar rules from a textbook. I was just reading. But because I was seeing correct sentences over and over, my brain started to recognize patterns. I began to understand how verbs worked, how to use prepositions, how to build complex sentences. It was like my brain was learning the rules naturally, just from exposure. One day in class, we had to write a paragraph about our weekend. I sat down and started writing. The words flowed easily. I used different sentence structures. I used connecting words like however, although, and meanwhile. When Mr. Peterson read my paragraph, he looked surprised. He asked me how I had improved so quickly. I told him I had been reading every night. He nodded and said, "Reading is like water for a plant. You might not see the growth every day, but over time, the plant becomes strong and healthy." I loved that metaphor. It made me realize that learning a language is not about instant results. It's about consistent, small efforts that add up over time. Reading was my water, and my English was the plant that was slowly growing stronger. After a few months, I felt confident enough to try something more challenging. I went to a bookstore and looked at the bestseller section. I picked up a novel that everyone was talking about. It was much thicker than the books I had been reading. The language was more complex. But I decided to try it anyway. The first few chapters were difficult. There were many words I didn't know. The sentences were longer and more complicated. But I remembered Mr. Peterson's advice. Don't look up every word. Try to understand from context. Be like a detective. So that's what I did. When I encountered a word I didn't know, I looked at the words around it. I tried to guess the meaning based on the situation in the story. Sometimes I was right, sometimes I was wrong. But the important thing was that I kept reading. There were moments when I felt frustrated. There were pages where I understood only 60 or 70% of what I was reading. But I didn't give up. I reminded myself that even understanding 70% was better than understanding nothing. And as I continued reading, that 70% became 80%, then 90%. It took me almost 2 months to finish that novel. But when I closed the book on the last page, I felt like I had climbed a mountain. I had done something I thought was impossible. I had read a real grown-up novel in English. Not a simplified version. Not a children's book. A real novel that native speakers read. The impact on my English was incredible. My vocabulary had expanded dramatically. I knew words I had never studied in class. Words like glimpse, hesitate, approach, determine, realize. These words had become part of my active vocabulary. I used them when I spoke and when I wrote. My writing improved too. When I wrote emails or essays, I found myself naturally using better sentence structures. I knew how to start a sentence in different ways. I knew how to connect ideas smoothly. I knew how to make my writing more interesting and less repetitive. All of this came from reading and seeing how professional writers constructed their sentences. Even my pronunciation got better. This surprised me at first. How could reading, which is silent, help with pronunciation? But then I realized that when I read, I was silently pronouncing the words in my head. Sometimes I even read out loud, especially when I was alone. This helped me practice saying difficult words and connecting sounds together. One evening, I decided to read out loud more intentionally. I chose a chapter from a book and read it aloud in my room. At first, I felt silly. My pronunciation wasn't perfect. I stumbled over some words. But I kept going. I read the same chapter again the next day, then again the day after that. By the third time, I could read it smoothly and confidently. My mouth had learned how to form the sounds. My brain had learned the rhythm of the sentences. I started doing this regularly. A few times a week, I would spend 10 minutes reading out loud. It felt like exercise for my mouth and my brain. Just like going to the gym makes your body stronger, reading out loud made my speaking stronger. As my English improved, I became more adventurous with what I read. I started reading blogs about topics I was interested in: technology, travel, cooking, psychology. Each blog taught me specialized vocabulary related to that field. I read news articles and learned how journalists write clearly and concisely. I even started reading comics and graphic novels, which were fun and helped me learn informal conversational English. The best part was that reading stopped feeling like studying. It became something I genuinely enjoyed. I looked forward to my reading time every day. It was like having a conversation with the author. It was like traveling to different worlds without leaving my room. Some books made me laugh. Some made me think deeply about life. Some taught me about history or science or different cultures. One day, about 8 months after I had started my reading habit, something amazing happened. I was reading a novel, and I suddenly realized that I wasn't translating in my head anymore. I was reading in English and understanding directly in English. The words went straight from the page to my understanding, without passing through my native language first. It was a wonderful feeling, like finally learning to ride a bicycle without training wheels. I remember calling my friend that night and telling her about this experience. She was learning English too, but she wasn't reading regularly. She complained that her English wasn't improving fast enough. I told her about my reading habit and encouraged her to try it. She was hesitant at first. She said she didn't have time. She said reading was boring. I heard all the same excuses I had once used. But I convinced her to try it for just 2 weeks. 10 minutes a day. That's all. She agreed. I helped her choose an easy book that matched her interests. She liked romance stories, so we found a simple romance novel for English learners. 2 weeks later, she called me again. She was excited. She had finished the book and wanted to read another one. She said she had learned so many new words, and that her teacher had noticed her improvement. This made me happy. I realized that reading was a gift I could share with others. I started recommending books to my classmates. I created a small reading club with 3 friends. We would read the same book and then meet once a week to discuss it in English. This added another layer to my learning. Not only was I reading, but I was also speaking about what I read. I had to express my opinions, summarize the story, and ask questions. All of this helped my English even more. Mr. Peterson was pleased with my progress. He told the class that I was a perfect example of what consistent reading could do. He encouraged everyone to follow my example. Some students started reading, others didn't. But those who did read regularly showed the same kind of improvement I had experienced. Now, after 2 years of daily reading, my English has transformed completely. I can read almost anything without difficulty. Novels, academic articles, news reports, technical documents. I can write clearly and confidently. My emails sound professional. My essays are well-structured, and my speaking has improved dramatically because I have so many more words to choose from and so many more ways to express my ideas. People often ask me what my secret is. They want to know how I learned English so well. I always give them the same answer. I read. Every single day. Even when I'm tired. Even when I'm busy. I read for at least 10 minutes. Some days I read for an hour or more. But even on the busiest days, I make sure to read something in English. Reading gave me more than just language skills. It gave me knowledge about the world. It gave me new perspectives. It introduced me to ideas I had never considered before. It made me a more thoughtful person. It taught me empathy by letting me see the world through different characters' eyes. It taught me critical thinking by exposing me to different arguments and viewpoints. I also discovered that reading helped me in unexpected ways. It helped me relax before bed. It improved my focus and concentration. It made me more patient because I had to sit still and pay attention for extended periods. These benefits went beyond just learning English. They improved my life in general. If I could go back and give advice to my younger self, the one who thought reading was boring and unnecessary, I would say this: give reading a chance. Start small. Just 10 minutes a day. Pick something you find interesting, not something you think you should read. Don't worry about understanding every word. Focus on enjoying the story or the information. Be consistent. Do it every day, even when you don't feel like it. And most importantly, be patient with yourself. Progress comes slowly, but it definitely comes. Reading is not a magic solution that will make you fluent overnight, but it is a powerful tool that works quietly in the background, strengthening your language skills day by day. It's like planting a seed. You water it every day. You don't see much happening at first, but underneath the soil, roots are growing, and one day, you see a sprout. Then leaves. Then flowers. That's what reading does for your English. So if you're learning English, or any language really, I encourage you to read. Start today. Right now. Find something interesting and read for just 10 minutes. Then do it again tomorrow. And the day after that. Make it a habit. Make it part of your daily routine, like brushing your teeth or having breakfast. You won't regret it. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it inspires you to pick up a book and start your own reading journey. Remember, every expert reader was once a beginner. Every person who reads easily today once struggled with their first book. The only difference between them and you is time and practice. So start now. Your future self will thank you.